How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, December 12th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I am going to review yesterday's Elite matchups and performances from Sunday, December 11th, and I am going to preview what's going on today. But before I do so, I'm going to take a quick step back and look at where we are in the calendar year. 2 weeks into December, we are in the semifinal round of the FIFA World Cup. The first matchup between Argentina and Croatia will take place tomorrow. The winner will go on to the final, and the loser will go on to the third place playoff game. And then taking a look of what's going on here with college sports, we are entering the college football bowl season, as the very first bowl games will be played on Friday. Taking a look at what's going on, of course, with college basketball, there were some ranked matchups. There was one ranked matchup where both teams were ranked in the top 15. Yesterday was Sunday, so there was a lot of football, as we are currently in the 14th week of this 18-week NFL season. We are also still in the first half of the NHL and the NBA seasons, respectively. Taking a look first at what's going on with the FIFA World Cup, Argentina will face off against Croatia tomorrow at 2 o'clock on Fox. And of course, the winner will face off against the winner of France and Morocco on Wednesday. Taking a look at what's going on with college football, more specifically, on Friday, we will see the first two bowls in the Hometown Lenders Bahamas Bowl and the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl. As we get closer to those day by day, I will, of course, give you more information. Taking a look now what's going on in the world of college basketball. The highest ranked college basketball team that played yesterday would be the 7th ranked Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee would face off against 13th ranked Maryland in the Basketball Hall of Fame Invitational. This matchup would see 7th ranked Tennessee beat Maryland by 3 points. They won it 56-53 after they outscored Maryland by 17 in the first half, doubling Maryland's output then. On the losing end of this matchup, the 13th ranked Maryland Terrapins would be led in scoring by their starting guard, Jameer Young. He had 18 points, 7 assists, and 2 blocks in 36 minutes. He shot 6 for 18 from the field and 5 for 6 from the free throw line. On the winning end of this matchup, the 7th ranked Volunteers would be led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Zakai Zeigler. Their sophomore out of Long Island, New York, would finish with 12 points on the day in 25 minutes. He would shoot 5 for 13 from the field and 2 for 5 from 3. With this win, the 7th ranked Tennessee Volunteers are 9-1. With this loss, 13th ranked Maryland falls to 8-2. Looking at the 20th ranked team in the nation, the Iowa State Cyclones would host the unranked McNeese Cowboys. Iowa State would win this game by 37 after they would outscore McNeese by 28 in the second half. On the winning end of this matchup, 20th ranked Iowa State would be led in scoring by their starting forward, Aljaz Kunk. Their senior out of Slovenia would finish with 21 points. He would have 8 rebounds as well in 34 minutes. He shot 8 for 12 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3. He would make both of his free throws on the night. With this win, the 20th ranked Iowa State Cyclones are 8-2, and with this loss, unranked McNeese is 3-7. Taking a look now at the 23rd ranked team in the nation, the Mississippi State Bulldogs would face off against unranked Minnesota. 23rd ranked Mississippi State would win this game by 18 after they would outscore Minnesota by 10 in the second half. On the winning end of this matchup, 23rd ranked Mississippi State would be led in scoring by their starting forward, Tolu Smith. Their senior out of Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, would finish with 20 points and 5 rebounds and 2 blocks in 27 minutes. He shot 6 for 9 from the field and 8 for 9 from the free throw line. With this win, 23rd ranked Mississippi State remains undefeated this year at 9-0. This is their first win on the road. And with this loss, unranked Minnesota is 4-6 this season. Taking a look at what's going on today in college basketball. Starting off at 8, the 2nd ranked Texas Longhorns are set to host unranked Rice in Moody Center. At 9 o'clock, 18th ranked Gonzaga is going to host unranked Northern Illinois. At the same time, 21st ranked Creighton is going to host unranked Arizona State on FS1, as Arizona State is 9-1. They're not going to host them. It's going to be in Las Vegas. Forgive me. At 10 o'clock, 22nd ranked San Diego State is set to host unranked Kennesaw State as well. Taking a look now what's going on at the professional level. Starting off with the NFL, here we are in the midst of week 14 as teams are starting to clinch playoff spots. Taking a look first at what would happen in Buffalo, New York, the Bills would host the New York Jets. The Bills would beat the Jets 20-12, as with this win, the Buffalo Bills are one of two teams in the AFC to be the first team to cross that 10-win threshold. The Bills would win this game 20-12 after they outscored the Jets 7-0 in the first half and then 13-12 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting New York Jets were led in passing by Mike White. New York's starting quarterback out of Western Kentucky would end up throwing for 268 yards. New York's leading rusher would be Zonovan Knight. Their running back out of North Carolina State would have 17 carries for 71 yards as he had a rushing touchdown. His 6 yards through the air gave him 77 yards of offense. New York's leading wide receiver would be Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. He had 6 receptions for 78 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, the Jets were led in tackles by their linebacker out of Alabama, C.J. Mosley. He would finish with 9 tackles on the day. Quinnen Williams, their defensive tackle, would finish with 3 tackles on the day as he had 2 of the team's 3 sacks. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Buffalo Bills were led out by their elite starting quarterback, Josh Allen. He would complete 16 of his 27 passes. He threw for 147 yards and a touchdown. He was also the team's leading rusher. He had 47 yards on the ground, and he had a rushing touchdown there. He had 194 yards of offense with his 2 touchdowns. The Bills' leading tackler on the defensive side would be Matt Milano. Their linebacker out of Boston College would go on and finish with 9 total tackles on the day for Buffalo. The Bills would combine for 4 sacks, as 2 of them would come from Greg Rousseau. With this win at home, the Bills are holding on to a 10-3 record. That is the best record in the AFC East, as they have 2 more wins than the second-place Miami Dolphins. In the playoff picture, they are currently holding on to that number 1 seed, as they have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, the Bills are holding on to a 4-game winning streak. Only the Cincinnati Bengals have a longer active winning streak in the AFC. And of course, a 4-game winning streak means that the Bills have won 4 of their last 5 games to date. With this loss, the New York Jets are now holding on to a 7-6 record. As of right now, the Jets are holding on to the 3rd best record in the AFC East, as they are currently sitting a full game behind the second place Miami Dolphins and 3 games behind the division-leading Buffalo Bills. As of right now, the New York Jets have as many wins as the 7th seed LA Chargers, but I guess the Chargers hold the tiebreaker there. As of right now, the Jets are on a 2-game losing streak, and they've lost 3 of their last 5 games to date. Jumping out to Cincinnati, the reigning AFC champs, Cincinnati Bengals would host the Cleveland Browns from their state and their division. The Bengals would beat the Browns 23-10. They would outscore Cleveland 13-3 in the first half and then 10-7 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Cleveland Browns were led out by their elite starting quarterback out of Clemson, Deshaun Watson. Watson would complete 26 of his 42 passes. He threw for 276 yards as he threw a touchdown and an interception. Deshaun Watson would finish with 33 yards on the ground as he had 309 yards of offense. The Browns' elite running back Nick Chubb had 34 rushing yards and 20 receiving yards. He had 54 total yards of offense. Cleveland's leading receiver would be Donovan Peoples-Jones. He had 8 receptions for 114 yards. David Njoku would finish with 7 receptions for 59 yards as he had the team's lone receiving touchdown. The Browns would be led in tackles by John Johnson III. Their safety out of Boston College would finish with 8 tackles on the day. Cleveland's elite defensive end and former number 1 overall pick, Myles Garrett, would finish with 6 tackles on the day. He had all 3 of the team's tackle for loss, and he had both of the team's sacks. The team's lone interception would go to Deion Jones as he had 7 tackles on the day for Cleveland. And on the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Cincinnati Bengals would be led out by their starting quarterback and former Heisman winner Joe Burrow. Burrow would throw for 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. His 10 yards on the ground would give him 249 yards of offense. Cincinnati's running back and former Pro Bowler Joe Mixon would finish with 14 carries for 96 yards. He had 10 yards through the air as he had 106 yards of offense. Cincinnati's elite wide receiver, Ja'Marr Chase, would finish with 10 receptions for 119 yards as he had one of the team's 2 receiving touchdowns. The other one would go to Trenton Irwin. Cincy's wide receiver out of Stanford would finish with 2 receptions for 58 yards as he had the receiving touchdown. The Bengals would be led in tackles by Logan Wilson. Their linebacker out of Wyoming had 17 total tackles for the team as he had half of a sack. Jesse Bates III would record their only interception as he had 3 tackles as well. With this win, the Cincinnati Bengals are 9-4. They are tied with the Baltimore Ravens for the best record in the AFC North. However, the Ravens own that tiebreaker, so right now the Bengals are holding on to the top wild card seed, the 5th seed in the AFC right now, as they have one more win than the 6th seed Miami Dolphins. The Bengals' 5-game winning streak is the longest active winning streak in the AFC. Only the San Francisco 49ers have a longer active winning streak in the NFL. The Bengals, of course, have won their last 5 games. That's how a 5-game winning streak works. With this loss, the Cleveland Browns are 5-8. They are tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the worst record in the division, as they sit 4 games behind the Ravens and the Bengals at the top. Currently sitting outside of the playoff picture, they have 2 less wins than the LA Chargers, who are holding on to that 7th seed. With this loss, the Browns have lost 3 of their last 5 games to date. Jumping out to the Jerry Jones Dome in Dallas, the Cowboys would host the Houston Texans from within the state. The Cowboys would beat the Texans 27-23, as they would have to come from behind at the end. The Cowboys would be outscored 20-17 in the first half. And then after trailing 23-17 going into the 4th quarter, Dallas would make a field goal to shorten their deficit to 3. And with less than a minute left, Ezekiel Elliott's 2-yard touchdown run would give the Dallas Cowboys their 10th win of the season. They are one of 5 teams in the NFL right now to have crossed that threshold. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Houston Texans were led out by Davis Mills. Their starting quarterback out of Stanford would throw for 175 yards and an interception. The Texans' leading running back would be Dameon Pierce. Their rookie running back out of Florida would go on and have 78 yards and a rushing touchdown on the ground. The Texans' leading receiver this game would be Chris Moore. He would finish with 10 receptions for 124 yards. The Texans' leading tackler would be Jalen Petre. Their safety out of Baylor would finish with 12 total tackles on the day. Houston's cornerback out of Central Arkansas, Tremon Smith, would finish with both of the team's interceptions as he also had 3 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Dallas Cowboys were led out by their starting quarterback out of Mississippi State, Dak Prescott. Dak would throw for 284 yards. He threw a touchdown and 2 interceptions. He had 23 yards on the ground, giving him 307 yards of offense. The Dallas Cowboys were led in rushing by their elite running back out of Ohio State, Ezekiel Elliott. He had 15 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 19 yards through the air, giving him 81 yards of offense. Their second leading rusher, Tony Pollard, had 42 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, as well as 20 yards and a receiving touchdown through the air. He would have 62 yards of offense with his 2 touchdowns. Dallas's leading receiver would be Dalton Schultz. Dallas's tight end out of Stanford would finish with 87 receiving yards on the day off of 6 receptions. Noah Brown would finish with 4 receptions for 85 yards. Dallas's leading tackler will be Leighton Vander Esch. Their first-round linebacker out of Boise State would finish with 14 tackles, as one of his tackles was for loss. As a unit, the Cowboys did not register a sack. However, Israel Mukuamu would finish with the team's lone interception on the day. And with this win, the Dallas Cowboys are holding on to a 10-3 record. That is the second best record in the NFC East. They have 2 less wins than the Philadelphia Eagles, who have the best record in the NFL. In the NFC playoff picture, the Dallas Cowboys are holding on to that 5 seed very comfortably right now. With 4 games left in their schedule, they have 3 more wins than the Washington Commanders, the New York Giants, and the Seahawks, who are all fighting for that second wild card spot. Right now, the Cowboys are on a 4-game winning streak. only the San Francisco 49ers have a longer active winning streak in the NFC. And with this win, the Dallas Cowboys have won 4 of their last 5 games to date, hence the 4-game winning streak. And on the losing end of this matchup, the Houston Texans are 1-11-1. They are the only team in the NFL that has less than 3 wins this year, as they have the worst record in the AFC South. They have 6 less wins than the division-leading Tennessee Titans, as of course they have 4 games left in their schedule. Of course, they're not going to make it. As of right now, they are holding on to the longest active losing streak in the NFL, as they are holding on to an 8-game losing streak, which is almost half the season. And with taking a look now at what would take place in Detroit in a matchup between 2 NFC North rivals, the Detroit Lions would host the Minnesota Vikings and beat the Vikings at home 34-23. The Lions would outscore the Vikings 14-7 in the first half and then 20-16 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Minnesota Vikings would be led out by their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Cousins threw for 425 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Vikings' leading receiver would be their elite wide receiver out of LSU and former champ, Justin Jefferson. He had 11 receptions for 223 receiving yards. The Vikings' elite running back, Dalvin Cook, had 15 carries for 23 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 13 yards through the air, giving him 36 yards of offense. The Lions' second leading receiver, TJ Hawkinson, would have 6 receptions for 77 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, the Vikings will be led in tackles by Dalvin Tomlinson, Josh Metellus, and Eric Kendricks, as all of these players had 9 tackles. Minnesota's defense would combine for no sacks or interceptions as a unit against this Lions offense. On the winning end of this matchup, the Lions were led out by their starting quarterback and former number 1 overall pick out of Cal, Jared Goff. Goff threw for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. You can say he took Goff. He would end up running for 9 as he had 339 yards of offense. Detroit's leading receiver would be DJ Chark. Detroit's wide receiver out of LSU would go on and finish with 94 yards off of 6 receptions. Their third leading receiver, Josh Reynolds, would have 5 receptions for 51 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, the Lions would be led in tackles by Alex Anzalone. Their linebacker out of Florida would finish with 9 total tackles on the day. The Lions would combine for 4 sacks as a unit, as one of them would come from their second overall pick from this year, Aiden Hutchinson. With this win, the Detroit Lions are 6-7. That is the second best record in the NFC North. They have 4 less wins than the division-leading Minnesota Vikings, with 4 games left in the schedule. In the playoff picture, they are currently sitting outside of it, as they have 1 less win than the 7th seed New York Giants. Right now, the Lions are on a 2-game winning streak, and they've won 4 of their last 5 games, as they can very well see themselves insert this playoff picture. With this loss, the Minnesota Vikings are 10-3. That is the second best record in the NFC right now, tied with the Dallas Cowboys. They have the best record in the NFC North, as they have 4 more wins than the Detroit Lions. I imagine with 1 more win, they should lock up the division, but right now, they have yet to clinch the playoffs. As of right now, they have 2 less wins in the NFC leading Philadelphia Eagles, so that's where they sit right there. And with this loss, the Minnesota Vikings have lost 2 of their last 5 games to date. Jumping out to Nashville, the Tennessee Titans would host the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars would beat the Titans on the road 36-22. They won this game by 2 touchdowns after they would outscore the Titans 20-14 in the first half. Jacksonville would outscore Tennessee 16-8 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Titans were led out by their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill threw for 254 yards. He would throw 2 touchdowns and an interception. He had 16 total yards on the ground. That would give him 270 yards of offense. Tennessee's elite running back out of Alabama and former Heisman winner, Derrick Henry, would have 17 carries for 121 yards as he had a rushing touchdown. He also had 34 yards through the air. That would give him 155 yards of offense. In the defensive unit for Tennessee, their leading tackler will be Monty Rice. The Titans linebacker out of Georgia would finish with 12 tackles on the day. As a unit, the Titans would combine for no sacks or interceptions. On the winning end of this matchup, the visiting Jacksonville Jaguars would be led out by their elite starting quarterback and former #1 overall pick out of Clemson, Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence would complete 30 of his 42 passes. He threw for 368 yards and 3 touchdowns. He would have 7 yards and a rushing touchdown on the ground, giving him 375 yards and 4 total touchdowns on the day. The Jaguars' leading receiver would be Evan Ingram. Their tight end out of Ole Miss would finish with 11 receptions for 162 yards and 2 of the team's 3 receiving touchdowns. Zay Jones would finish with 8 receptions for 77 yards as he had the other receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Jacksonville will be led in tackles by Foyesade Olokun. Their linebacker out of Yale would finish with 14 tackles on the day. As a unit, Jacksonville's defense would combine for 4 tackles, or for 4 sacks, I mean. One of them would come from this year's #1 overall pick, Travon Walker out of Georgia. The team's own interception will go to Andrew Wingard. Andrew Wingard would finish with 7 tackles and a tackle for loss alongside his interception. And with this win, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 5-8. With 4 games left in their schedule, they are sitting with 2 less wins than the division-leading Tennessee Titans. In the AFC playoff picture, they have 2 less wins than the LA Chargers, who are holding on to that 7th seed. With this win, the Jaguars have won 3 of their last 5. And with this loss, the Tennessee Titans are 7-6, holding the best record in the AFC South for right now, with 2 more wins than the second-place Jacksonville Jaguars. As of right now, they're holding on to that 4th seed in the AFC playoff picture, and they're holding on to a 3-game losing streak as of right now. The Denver Broncos and the Houston Texans are the only teams in the AFC with longer losing streaks than the Titans, as the Titans have lost 3 of their last 5 games to date. Jumping out to what's going on in New York, the Giants would host the Philadelphia Eagles, as the Eagles came in with the best record in the NFL. The Eagles would beat the Giants 48-22 in New Jersey. They would go on and outscore the Giants 24-7 in the first half, and then 24-15 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown New York Giants would be led out by Daniel Jones out of Duke. Daniel Jones would end up throwing for 169 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 26 yards and an additional touchdown. He had 195 yards of offense with 2 touchdowns in his name. Tyrod Taylor, New York's other quarterback, would throw for 47 yards and a touchdown as he completed all 5 of his passes. He would rush for 40 yards as well, as he had 87 yards of offense. The Giants' leading receiver would be Richie James. Their wide receiver out of mid-Tennessee would finish with 7 receptions, 61 yards, and a receiving touchdown. The Giants would be led in tackles by Julian Love. Their safety out of Notre Dame would finish with 10 tackles on the day. The Giants as a unit would finish with 4 sacks. 2 of them would come from Azeez Ojulari. Their linebacker out of Georgia would finish with half of the team's sack load, as he would finish with 4 tackles total on the day. On the winning end of this matchup, the visiting Eagles would be led out by their starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, out of Oklahoma. Hurts would end up throwing for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 77 yards, and he would have a rushing touchdown as well. He would go on and finish with 294 yards of offense for Philly and 3 touchdowns. Philly's leading rusher would be Miles Sanders. Their running back out of Penn State would finish with 17 carries. He had 144 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 11 yards through the air, giving him 155 yards of offense. The Eagles' leading receiver would be A.J. Brown. He finished with 4 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. The Eagles' elite wide receiver and former Heisman winner, Devontae Smith, had 5 receptions for 64 yards and a receiving touchdown. The Eagles would be led in tackles by Marcus Epps. Their safety out of Wyoming would lead the Eagles with 8 tackles on the day. 3 of the team's 7 sacks would come from Brandon Graham, as the Eagles' defensive end out of Michigan would finish with 4 total tackles for the day. Of course, 3 sacks and 3 tackles for loss for him. With this road win, the Philadelphia Eagles are holding on to a 12-1 record. They hold on to the best record in the entire NFL. In the NFC East, they sit 2 games ahead of the second place Dallas Cowboys, so they have yet to clinch the division, but they are the only team so far in the NFL to have clinched a playoff spot this far out from the end of the season. As of right now, they have 2 more wins than the second place Minnesota Vikings in the NFC playoff race. They are holding on to a 4-game winning streak, meaning they've won 4 of their last 5 games. Only the San Francisco 49ers have a longer active winning streak in the NFC than the Eagles do. Taking a look at what would happen with the other Pennsylvania team, the Pittsburgh Steelers would host the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens would beat the Steelers 6-4, as this game would come down to the very end. The Steelers would bring it to within 2 with like 2 minutes left, but the Ravens were able to run the clock out and win this game, as the Steelers are 1 loss away from Mike Tomlin's first ever losing season as the head coach. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Pittsburgh Steelers were led out by their starting quarterback out of UNC, Mitch Trubisky. He threw for 276 yards as he threw a touchdown and an interception. The Steelers' leading wide receiver in this matchup, Deontay Johnson, would finish with 6 receptions for 82 yards. Their second leading receiver, George Pickens, had 3 receptions for 78 yards. Pittsburgh's running back, Najee Harris, had 12 carries for 33 yards and a rushing touchdown. His 17 yards through the air gave him exactly 50 yards of offense. The Steelers' leading tackler would be their elite safety out of Alabama, Minkah Fitzpatrick. He would finish with 11 tackles on the day, as the Steelers would combine for 2 sacks as a unit. One of them would come from the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, the Steelers' elite linebacker out of Wisconsin, T.J. Watt. He had 5 tackles and one of the team's 2 sacks. On the winning end of this matchup, the visiting Baltimore Ravens were led out by their starting quarterback, Tyler Huntley, out of Utah. Tyler Huntley would throw for 88 yards as he ran for 31. He would combine for 119 yards of offense. The Ravens' leading rusher would be J.K. Dobbins. Their running back out of Ohio State would have 120 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. The Ravens' leading tacklers on the defensive side would be their elite corner, Marlon Humphrey, along with Kyle Hamilton, Chuck Clark, Roquan Smith, and Patrick Queen, as they each had 6 tackles. Roquan Smith would finish with one of the team's 2 sacks and one of the team's 3 interceptions. Patrick Queen would finish with an interception himself, as Marcus Williams had the other. Marcus Williams would finish with 3 tackles alongside his interception. With this win, the Baltimore Ravens are holding on to a 9-4 record. They are tied with the Cincinnati Bengals for the best record in the AFC North. However, the Ravens own the tiebreaker in the AFC playoff picture. They're holding on to the 3rd seed in the AFC. With 4 games left in the schedule, they have 1 less win than the AFC leading Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs. The Ravens are on a 2-game winning streak, as they have now won 4 of their last 5 games to date. With this loss, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 5-8. They are tied with the Cleveland Browns for the worst record in the AFC North. They have 4 less wins than the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals, who are tied at the top of the division. As of right now, they are currently holding 2 less wins than the LA Chargers, who are holding on to that 7th seed in the East right now. And then, of course, with this loss, the Steelers have lost 2 of their last 5 games to date. And currently they are tied at 5-8 with 3 other teams in the AFC, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Jaguars. Taking a look at what would go down in the Mile High City, the Denver Broncos would host the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs would end up beating the Broncos on the road 34-28, as the Chiefs would outscore the Broncos 27-14 in the first half. The Broncos would outscore the Chiefs 14-7 in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Denver Broncos were led out by their elite starting quarterback out of Wisconsin, Russell Wilson. The former Super Bowl champ would complete 23 of his 36 pass attempts. He threw for 247 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He would lead the team in rushing as well. His 57 yards on the ground would give him 304 yards of offense. Denver's leading receiver, Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama, had 8 receptions for 73 yards as he had 3 receiving touchdowns. Marlon Mack would finish with 15 rushing yards, as the running back from USF would also have 62 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. He would go on and combine for 77 yards of offense. The Broncos would be led in tackles by Josey Jewell and Kareem Jackson, as they each had 10 tackles. The interceptions would come from Josey Jewell and Pat Surtain. Josey Jewell would finish with 2 of them, as Pat Surtain would finish with the other. Pat Surtain would also go on and finish with 2 tackles alongside his interception. On the winning end of this matchup, the visiting Kansas City Chiefs would be led out by their elite starting quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes would end up completing 28 of his 42 pass attempts. He would throw for 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. The Chiefs' leading rusher would be Isaiah Pacheco. Their running back out of Rutgers would have 70 rushing yards on the day. He had 23 yards through the air, as he had 93 yards of offense. The Chiefs' leading receiver would be Jerick McKinnon out of Georgia Southern. Jerick McKinnon would have 7 receptions for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Juju Smith-Schuster out of USC had 9 receptions for 74 yards, as he had a receiving touchdown. The Chiefs' leading tackler would be Nick Bolton. Their linebacker out of Missouri would finish with 9 tackles on the day. The Chiefs as a team would combine for 6 sacks, as one of them would come from their elite defensive tackle out of Mississippi State, Chris Jones. And the 2 interceptions would go to L'Jarius Sneed, as L'Jarius Sneed would finish with 7 tackles, and Willie Gay. Willie Gay would finish with 5 tackles. He would have a tackle for loss, and he would have a 47-yard pick six. With this win in Mile High, the Kansas City Chiefs are holding on to a 10-3 record. They have the best record in the AFC West. They have 3 more wins than the second-place LA Chargers, with 4 games left in their schedule. In the AFC playoff picture, they have the same record as the Buffalo Bills. However, the Bills own the tiebreaker. As of right now, the Chiefs have won 4 of their last 5 games to date. And with this loss, the Denver Broncos are 3-10. That is the worst record in the AFC West, as they have 7 less wins than the division-leading Chiefs. As of right now, they're holding on to the second worst record in the AFC as a whole. Their 5-game losing streak is only dwarfed by the Houston Texans in the AFC as of right now. And then taking a look at what would happen in San Francisco, the 49ers would host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 49ers, led out by Brock Purdy, would beat the Buccaneers 35-7 at home. They would shut the Buccaneers out 28-0 in the first half, as both teams would exchange a touchdown in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Buccaneers were led out by their go-to starting quarterback, 7-time Super Bowl champion and future Hall of Famer Tom Brady. Tom Brady would complete 34 of his 55 passes. He would throw for 253 yards, as he threw a touchdown and 2 interceptions. The Buccaneers' leading rusher would be Rachaad White. He would finish with 56 yards on the ground and 21 through the air, giving him 77 yards of offense total. The Buccaneers would be led in tackles by Logan Ryan. Their safety out of Rutgers would finish with a total of 9 tackles on the day. The Buccaneers' defense would combine for no sacks or interceptions. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown 49ers were led out by their starting quarterback out of Iowa State, Brock Purdy. Purdy would throw for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. He would have 3 yards and a touchdown on the ground as well. He had 188 yards and 3 total touchdowns. The Niners' elite running back out of Stanford, Christian McCaffrey, had 14 carries for 119 yards, as he had a rushing touchdown. He would finish with 34 yards through the air and a receiving touchdown, as he would finish with 153 yards of offense, along with 2 touchdowns. The Niners' elite wide receiver, Deebo Samuel, would have 21 rushing yards, as he had a rushing touchdown for the day. He had 43 yards through the air, as he had 64 yards of offense. The Niners' leading receiver would be Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk had 2 receptions for 57 yards, as he had a receiving touchdown. On the Niners' defense, their leading tackler would be Dre Greenlaw. Their linebacker out of Arkansas would finish with 15 total tackles on the day. The Niners would combine for no sacks. However, their 2 interceptions would go to Tashaun Gibson Sr. and Dre Greenlaw, as of course Dre Greenlaw would lead the team in tackles with 15. Tashaun Gibson Sr. would finish with 4 tackles himself. With this win, the San Francisco 49ers are 9-4. They are currently holding on to the best record in the NFC West with 4 games left in their schedule. They sit 2 games ahead of the second place Seattle Seahawks. In the NFC playoff picture, they hold on to that 3rd seed as they have 3 less wins than the NFC leading Philadelphia Eagles. The San Francisco 49ers 6-game winning streak is the longest active winning streak in the NFL. With this loss, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6-7. That is still the best record in the NFC South, as they have 1 more win than the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons, who are tied for 2nd. Right now, the Buccaneers are holding on to that 4th seed in the NFC playoff picture as they lead their division. They have 6 less wins than the Philadelphia Eagles, who lead the NFC, and they have 3 less wins than the 49ers, who are in that 3rd seed. So it looks like the Buccaneers, or whoever wins that division, is going to be locked into that 4th seed for right now. With this loss, the Buccaneers have lost 2 of their last 5 games to date. Taking a look now at what would take place in Seattle in the American Pacific Northwest, the Seahawks would host the Carolina Panthers. The visiting Panthers would beat the Seahawks 30-24. The Panthers would outscore the Seahawks 20-14 in the first half, as both teams would score 10 points in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Seattle Seahawks would be let out in passing by their starting quarterback Geno Smith out of West Virginia. Geno Smith would end up throwing for 264 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. His 20 yards on the ground gave him 284 total yards on the day. The Seahawks leading receiver would be Marquise Goodwin out of Texas. He would go on and lead the Seahawks with 5 receptions for 95 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. The Seahawks elite wide receiver DK Metcalf had 5 receptions for 71 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. The Seahawks wide receiver out of Kansas State, Tyler Lockett, would finish with 5 receptions for 60 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, the Seahawks would be led in tackles by their linebacker out of Utah, Cody Barton. He had 15 on the day. Ryan Neal would finish with 11 tackles himself as Jordan Brooks had 10. The Seahawks as a team would combine for 2 sacks. On the winning end of this matchup, the visiting Carolina Panthers would be led out by their starting quarterback out of USC, Sam Darnold. Darnold threw for 120 yards as he threw a touchdown. Darnold would rush for 30 yards as he had 150 total yards of offense. The Panthers' leading rusher would be Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State. Hubbard would finish with 74 yards and a rushing touchdown. He would also go on and have 25 receiving yards as he had 99 yards of offense. The Panthers' second leading rusher, Deontay Foreman, would finish with 74 rushing yards. He had a receiving yard through the air, which gave him 75. The Panthers' leading tackler would be Shaq Thompson. Their linebacker out of Washington would finish with 9 tackles as he had half of a sack. The Panthers as a team would combine for 3 sacks and 2 interceptions. J.C. Horn would record one of them as he had 6 tackles. The other one was from C.J. Henderson as he had 2 tackles. With this road win, the Carolina Panthers are 5-8. They're holding on to the second best record in the NFC South alongside the Atlanta Falcons. They are sitting with 1 less win than the division-leading Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In the NFC playoff picture, they have 2 less wins than the New York Giants, who are holding on to that 7 seed for right now. And with this loss, the Seattle Seahawks are now holding on to a 7-6 record. That is the second best record in the NFC West. They have 2 less wins than the division-leading San Francisco 49ers for right now. In the playoff picture, they sit just outside of it. They have as many wins as the Giants and the Commanders, who are sitting in those 6 and 7 spots. But because both of those teams tied against each other and the Seattle Seahawks have 1 more loss, the Seahawks are sitting right outside of that picture. They are currently holding on to, with this loss, they've lost 3 of their last 5 games to date. Last but not least, looking at the Sunday night primetime matchup in Los Angeles, the Chargers would host the Miami Dolphins as both of these teams are fighting for playoff spots. The Chargers would beat the Dolphins at home 23-17 after outscoring the Dolphins 17-7 in the first half. Then the Dolphins would outscore the Chargers 10-6 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Dolphins were led out by their elite starting quarterback out of Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa. Tua would complete 10 of his 28 passes. He threw for 145 yards as he threw a touchdown. He had 28 yards on the ground as he had 173 yards of offense. The Dolphins' leading receiver would be their elite wide receiver out of West Alabama, Tyreek Hill. The NFL's fastest man would finish with 4 receptions for 81 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. The Dolphins' leading tackler would be Jerome Baker. Their linebacker out of Ohio State would finish with 11 tackles. He had 2 tackles for loss as he had finished with one of the team's 4 sacks. On the winning end of this primetime matchup, the hometown LA Chargers were led out by their elite starting quarterback out of Oregon, Justin Herbert. Herbert would complete 35 of his 51 passes. He would throw for 367 yards as he threw a touchdown. His 8 yards on the ground would give him 375 for the day. The Chargers' leading rusher would be Austin Eckler. He had 45 rushing yards as he had 59 receiving yards through the air. He would finish with 104 total yards of offense as he had a rushing touchdown. The Chargers would be led in receiving by Mike Williams. He had 6 receptions for 117 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. Keenan Allen, their elite wide receiver out of Cal, would finish with 92 receiving yards off of 12 receptions. The Chargers' leading tackler would be Kenneth Murray Jr. Their linebacker out of Oklahoma would finish with 7 total tackles to help lead the Chargers to victory, as the Chargers would finish with 2 sacks as a unit and no interceptions. With this win at home, the LA Chargers are 7-6. That is the second best record in the AFC West. They have 3 less wins than the division-leading Kansas City Chiefs with 4 games left in their schedule. In the AFC playoff picture, the Chargers are holding on to that 7th spot for right now. They're tied with the New York Jets, who are sitting right outside of it, but I guess the Chargers own the tiebreaker there. They have to basically win out if they want to see themselves in the playoffs this year. The Chargers, with this win, have won 2 of their last 5 games to date. And with this loss, the Miami Dolphins are 8-5. They're holding on to the second best record in the AFC East. They have 2 less wins than the division-leading Buffalo Bills right now. In the AFC wildcard picture, they are holding on to that 6th seed, that second wildcard spot, as they have 1 less win than the wildcard-leading Cincinnati Bengals, and they have 1 more win than the Chargers, who are holding on to that 7th spot. So the Dolphins need to win out from here on out. With this loss, the Dolphins are on a 2-game losing streak, and they've lost 2 of their last 5 games to date. Taking a look now at what's going on today to finish off Week 14 with Monday Night Football, the 4-8 Arizona Cardinals are set to host the New England Patriots as of right now. The Cardinals are holding on to 3 less wins than the 7th seed New York Giants. I imagine if they were to win out, they can make the playoffs, but they would have to start from right here. The New England Patriots are 6-6. If they lose, they would be the only team in their division to hold a losing record. So that's what's at stake today. Taking a look at what's going on in the NHL, starting off with the defending champs playing in St. Louis. The Blues would host the Colorado Avalanche, as the Avalanche would win this game 3-2 in overtime off of Mikko Rantanen's overtime game-winning hat-trick goal. He would score all 3 of the goals for Colorado, as the second star of the game would be Colorado's goalie out of the Czech Republic, Pavel Francouz. With this road overtime win, the Colorado Avalanche are holding on to a record of 14-10-2. Right now, they are 30 points in 26 games, ties them with the Minnesota Wild for the third best record in the Central Division. The Avalanche are sitting 7 points behind the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars, who are currently sitting at the top of the division. As with this win, the Avalanche have won 4 of their last 10 to date. With this loss, the St. Louis Blues are 12-15-1. This would be their first overtime loss of the season. Now the Edmonton Oilers are the only team in the Western Conference who have yet to lose in overtime, sitting alongside with the Islanders as one of 2 teams in the NHL. I digress. The St. Louis Blues are holding on to 25 points in 28 games. That is the third worst record in the Central Division. They sit 12 points behind the two-way tie at the top between the Jets and the Stars. The Blues have lost their last 2 games. They've lost 8 of their last 10 games, as one of those 8 games would be in overtime. Taking a look at what would happen in Columbus, the Blue Jackets would host the Los Angeles Kings. In another game that would go to overtime, forced by the Kings, the Blue Jackets would win it 1 minute into overtime. Adrian Kemp's 10th minute goal would send it into overtime for the Kings, as Johnny Gaudreau's 10th goal of the season would give the Blue Jackets what they needed for this win. The top star would be Columbus's center out of Columbus, Ohio, Jack Roslovic. He would finish with 2 goals and 2 assists. Columbus's right winger Patrick Laney had a goal and 2 assists. The third star would be the Los Angeles Kings center Anze Kopitar, as he would have a couple of goals himself. With this home overtime win, the Columbus Blue Jackets are 10-15-2. They have now left the Philadelphia Flyers to be the last team in the Eastern Conference to pick up a double-digit amount of wins. However, the Blue Jackets' 22 points in 27 games is the worst standing in the entire Eastern Conference right now. Right now in the West, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Anaheim Ducks are the 2 teams in the NHL that have worse records than the Blue Jackets right now. With this win, the Blue Jackets are on a 2-game winning streak, as they have now won 4 of their last 10, as they sit 21 points behind the division-leading New Jersey Devils. With this overtime loss, the LA Kings are 15-11-5. Their 35 points through 31 games is tied with the Seattle Kraken for the second best standing in the Pacific Division, with 4 more games played than the Seattle Kraken so far. They sit 6 points behind the division-leading Vegas Golden Knights, and with this loss, the Kings have lost 6 of their last 10 games to date, as 3 of those 6 losses would come in overtime. Jumping out to Sunrise, Florida, the Florida Panthers would host the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken would beat the Florida Panthers 5-2, with 3 of their goals coming in the second period. After this game was tied up at 1, the Kraken would take the outright lead in the second period off of Andre Burakovsky's 10th goal of the season. Burakovsky would be the second star. The top star would be Matty Beniers. Seattle's center out of Hingham, Massachusetts would finish with a goal and an assist. Seattle center Yanni Gourde had a goal and an assist, as he was the third star. With this road win in Florida, the Seattle Kraken are holding on to a 16-8-3 record. Their 35 points in 27 games is tied with the Los Angeles Kings for the second best standing in the Pacific Division. They sit 6 points behind the Golden Knights, as they've played 4 less games than the Kings. The Kraken have won 7 of their last 10 games to date, and with this loss, the Florida Panthers are 13-12-4. Their 30 points through 29 games is the 5th best record in the Atlantic Division. They sit 15 points behind the division-leading Boston Bruins. The Panthers are on a 2-game losing streak, as they have now lost 6 of their last 10. Jumping out to Phoenix, the Arizona Coyotes would host the Philadelphia Flyers. In a game that would go to overtime, the Coyotes would end up beating the Flyers 5-4. After the Flyers would force overtime off of Travis Konechny's 11th goal of the season, Clayton Keller would score his 3rd goal of the game to earn a hat trick and his 10th goal of the season, with less than 30 seconds left in overtime to force this win. Clayton Keller, the Arizona's right winger from Chesterfield, Missouri, like I said, would take home the top star, getting a hat trick and, of course, getting the game-winning goal for the team. The second star would go to Arizona's left winger, Nick Ritchie, as he would finish with a goal and an assist. With this home win, the Arizona Coyotes are holding on to a 9-13-4 record. Their 22 points through 26 games is the second worst record in the Central Division. They sit 15 points behind the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars, who are currently leading the division. The Coyotes are on a 2-game winning streak. They've won 3 of their last 10 games to date. With this overtime loss, the Philadelphia Flyers are 9-13-7. Their 25 points through 29 games is the second worst standing in the Metropolitan Division. They sit 18 points behind the division-leading New Jersey Devils. The Flyers are currently holding on to a 3-game losing streak. The Flyers' 3-game losing streak is the longest active losing streak in the East. It is tied with the Chicago Blackhawks for the longest active losing streak in the NHL. As with this loss, they have lost 8 of their last 10. 3 of those 8 losses would come in overtime or later. Jumping out to Winnipeg, the Central leading Jets would host the Washington Capitals for a chance to take the full lead by themselves as they had to break the tie with Dallas. The Capitals would beat the Jets 5-2 after the team would score 4 goals in the second period to take full advantage. The top star would be Washington's left winger Marcus Johansson out of Sweden, as he would go on and score the Capitals' 3rd goal of the game. Washington's second star would go to Charlie Lindgren, their goalie out of Lakeville, Minnesota, as he had 29 saves, even though he did allow 2 goals. With this road win, the Washington Capitals are holding on to an NHL record of 14-12-4. Their 32 points through 30 games is the 3rd worst record in the Metropolitan Division. They sit 11 points behind the division-leading New Jersey Devils. The Capitals' 4-game winning streak is the second longest active winning streak in the East, behind only the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Capitals have won 7 of their last 10 games to date. And with this home loss, the Winnipeg Jets are 18-8-1. Their 37 points through 27 games is tied with the Dallas Stars for the best record in the Central, as the Jets have played 1 less game than the Stars. The Jets sit 4 points behind the Pacific Division leading Golden Knights for the lead of the West. And with this loss, the Jets have lost 3 of their last 10 games to date. Jumping out to Las Vegas, last but not least, the Western Conference leading Vegas Golden Knights would host the Eastern Conference leading Boston Bruins as they came in tied for the lead. The Boston Bruins now hold the best record in the NHL after beating the Golden Knights 3-1. After the Golden Knights scored the first goal of the game in the first period, the Boston Bruins would break the 1-1 tie in the third period by scoring 2 unanswered. The go-ahead goal would come from Jake DeBrusk. It would be his 9th goal of the season. The top star would go to Boston center out of Quebec, Patrice Bergeron. He would go on and score the Boston Bruins' first goal of the game to tie the game up at 1 in the second. The third star of this game would be Linus Ullmark. Boston's goalie out of Sweden would just allow 1 goal to the best hockey team in the Western Conference, at least in the regular season, as he had 30 saves. With this road win, the Boston Bruins are holding on to a 22-4-1 record. Their 45 points through 27 games is the best record in the entire NHL. In the Atlantic Division, they sit 3 points ahead of the second-place Toronto Maple Leafs. In the Eastern Conference, they sit 2 points ahead of the Metropolitan Division leading New Jersey Devils. Compared to the Western Conference leader, they are sitting 4 points ahead of the Pacific Division leading Vegas Golden Knights. With this win, the Boston Bruins have won 7 of their last 10 games to date. Taking a look at what's going on today, at 7 o'clock on NHL Network, the only primetime game will see the New York Rangers host the New Jersey Devils, as the Rangers hold on to the 5th best record of the division that the New Jersey Devils are leading outright. A win here could see the New Jersey Devils return back up to the top of the NHL to tie themselves back up with the Bruins. Outside of the primetime game, the Montreal Canadiens are set to host the Calgary Flames at 7. At the same time, the Pittsburgh Penguins are set to host the Dallas Stars. The Stars are tied for their division lead, while the Penguins are holding on to the longest active winning streak in the NHL. At 7:30, the Anaheim Ducks, who hold the worst standing in the NHL, are going to host the Ottawa Senators, who have the worst standing in their Atlantic Division. At 8 o'clock, the Minnesota Wild are going to host the Edmonton Oilers. And then last but not least, at 8 o'clock, the St. Louis Blues are going to host the Nashville Predators. Taking a look at what's going on in NBA arenas, starting off in New Orleans, the Pelicans would host the Phoenix Suns. The Pelicans would come in with the best record in the West, and they would go on and beat the Suns 129-124 in overtime. They would outscore Phoenix by 5 in the overtime period, after the Suns would outscore the Pelicans by 5 in the fourth to force overtime. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Suns were led in scoring by their starting center DeAndre Ayton. He had 28 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists as he fouled out in 33 minutes. He shot 13 for 18 from the field and 2 for 3 from the free throw line. Phoenix's starting small forward, Mikal Bridges, had 27 points and 2 steals as well as 5 rebounds in 45 minutes. He shot 10 for 23 from the field, 5 for 13 from 3. He would make both of his free throw attempts on the night. Phoenix's elite starting point guard and future Hall of Famer Chris Paul would finish with 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 11 assists as Chris Paul fouled out in 34 minutes. He would shoot 3 for 10 from the field. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown New Orleans Pelicans, the organization that drafted Chris Paul, by the way, would be led out in scoring by their number 1 overall pick out of Duke, Zion Williamson. Williamson would finish with 35 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 turnovers in 42 minutes. Zion would shoot 14 for 21 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and 5 for 7 from the free throw line. The Pelicans starting shooting guard CJ McCollum would go on and finish with 29 points. Their guard out of Lehigh would finish also with 7 assists and 2 steals in 45 minutes. He shot 13 for 24 from the field. And with this home win, the New Orleans Pelicans are holding on to an 18-8 record. They're holding on to the best record in the Western Conference outright. Taking a look at how they compare to Eastern Conference teams, they still sit behind the Celtics and the Bucks record-wise, but out west, they are sitting 1 full game ahead of the second-place Memphis Grizzlies. The Pelicans are holding on to a 7-game winning streak. Their 7-game winning streak is the longest active winning streak in the NBA. The Pelicans have won 9 of their last 10 games to date. And with this overtime loss, the Phoenix Suns are 16-11. They're holding on to the 4th best record in the West as they now sit 2.5 games behind the Western Conference leading New Orleans Pelicans. The Suns are currently holding on to a 4-game losing streak. Their 4-game losing streak is the longest active losing streak in the Western Conference. The Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards are the 2 teams in the NBA who have longer active losing streaks than the Suns, as the Suns have lost 5 of their last 10 games. Jumping out to Detroit, the Pistons would host the Los Angeles Lakers as the Lakers would beat the Pistons 124-117. The Lakers won this game by 7 on the road after they had to outscore the Pistons by 12 in the first half and then by 6 in the fourth quarter because they were only up by 1 at the top of the third. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Detroit Pistons would be led in scoring by their starting small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic. He would go on and finish with 38 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals in 35 minutes. He would shoot 12 for 22 from the field, 6 for 12 from 3. He would make all 8 of his free throw attempts on the day. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the visiting LA Lakers would be led in scoring by their goated starting small forward and the NBA's active scoring leader, LeBron James. He would finish with 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in 37 minutes. He shot 14 for 24 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3 as he would make all 5 of his free throws. The Lakers' elite starting power forward, Anthony Davis, would finish with 34 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes. He shot 12 for 18 from the field and 10 for 12 from the free throw line. Off the bench, the Lakers' goated point guard Russell Westbrook, who's from Los Angeles, would finish with 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 9 assists for his hometown team in 21 minutes. He would shoot 5 for 9 from the field and 1 for 2 from the free throw line. With this road win, the LA Lakers are 11-15. That is tied with the Oklahoma City Thunder for the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference. The Lakers are sitting 7 games behind the Western Conference leading New Orleans Pelicans. The Lakers have won 6 of their last 10 games to date. With this loss, the Detroit Pistons are 7-22. That is currently the worst record in the entire NBA. They are one of 2 teams with less than 8 wins, sitting alongside the Hornets, where they have 2 more losses than the Hornets. The Pistons sit 15 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Boston Celtics. They're holding on to a 3-game losing streak as they've now lost 7 of their last 10 games to date. Jumping out to Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks would host the Sacramento Kings. The Knicks would win this game at home by 13. They won it 112-99. They would outscore the Kings by 14 points in the first quarter. As on the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Kings would be led out by their starting power forward, Domantas Sabonis. He would finish with 20 points and 12 rebounds in 39 minutes. He shot 7 for 10 from the field, and he would shoot 6 for 11 from the free throw line. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown New York Knicks were led in scoring by their starting power forward, Julius Randle. He finished with 27 points and 8 rebounds in 27 minutes. He shot 9 for 20 from the field and made all 6 of his free throws. New York starting shooting guard out of Duke, RJ Barrett, would finish with 27 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks in 44 minutes. He would shoot 9 for 21 from the field and 7 for 9 from the free throw line. With this win, the New York Knicks are 14-13. They are currently tied with the Indiana Pacers and the Atlanta Hawks for the 6th best record in the East. They are sitting 7 games behind the conference-leading Boston Celtics. The Knicks are on a 4-game winning streak. The New York Knicks 4-game winning streak is the longest active winning streak in the East. The Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans are the 2 teams in the NBA with longer active winning streaks than the Knicks. All 3 of these teams would have the first 3 picks of the 2019 draft, by the way. Zion Williamson, John Morant, and RJ Barrett, just for giggles. And on the losing end of this matchup, the Sacramento Kings are holding on to a 14-11 record. That is the 5th best record in the Western Conference. They now sit 3.5 games behind the Western Conference leading New Orleans Pelicans. The Kings have lost 5 of their last 10 games to date. Taking a look at what would take place in Orlando, the Magic would host the Toronto Raptors from up north. The Magic would end up beating the Raptors 111-99. They would end up winning this game by 12 at home after they would outscore the Raptors by 9 in the second quarter, and then by 5 in the fourth. They would end their halves very well. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Toronto Raptors were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard out of Duke, Gary Trent Jr. He had 24 points in 44 minutes. He shot 8 for 18 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and he would shoot 5 for 6 from the free throw line. The Raptors starting shooting guard and former All-Star out of Wichita State, Fred VanVleet, had 20 points, 7 assists, and 4 steals in 42 minutes. He shot 4 for 11 from the field and 10 for 12 from the free throw line. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Orlando Magic were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Franz Wagner. He finished with 23 points in 36 minutes. He shot 6 for 14 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3. He would make 8 of his 10 free throw attempts on the night. Orlando's starting power forward and in this year's number 1 overall pick, Paolo Banchero, would finish with 20 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists in 37 minutes. He would shoot 6 for 14 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 6 for 8 from the free throw line. With this win, the Orlando Magic are now 8-20. They are holding on to the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference as they now sit 13.5 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Boston Celtics. As of right now, the Magic are on a 3-game winning streak as they've won 3 of their last 10 games to date. Only the New York Knicks have a longer active winning streak in the East than the Magic do. And with this loss, the Toronto Raptors are 13-14. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference. They sit 8 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Celtics. The Raptors are on a 2-game losing streak as they have now lost 6 of their last 10 games to date. Jumping out to Philadelphia, the 76ers would host the Charlotte Hornets, and they would win this game by 18. They won it 131-113 after they would outscore the Hornets by 8 in the second quarter and then by 9 in the fourth. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Hornets were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Kelly Oubre Jr., and their other starting guard, Terry Rozier. Rozier would finish with 29 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 turnovers as he nearly fouled out in 34 minutes. He would shoot 10 for 20 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the free throw line. Charlotte's starting shooting guard, Kelly Oubre Jr., had 29 points and 2 steals as he nearly fouled out in 37 minutes. He shot 11 for 23 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and 4 for 7 from the free throw line. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown 76ers would be led in scoring by their elite starting center out of Kansas, Joel Embiid. Embiid had 53 points and 12 rebounds alongside 3 assists in 34 minutes. Joel Embiid would shoot 20 for 32 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and he would make all 11 of his free throw attempts on the day. The Sixers' elite starting shooting guard and former MVP, James Harden, would finish with 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 16 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 6 for 12 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the free throw line. With this win, the Philadelphia 76ers are now 14-12. They hold on to the 5th best record in the East as they now sit 6.5 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Boston Celtics. The Philadelphia 76ers are on a 2-game winning streak, and they've now won 6 of their last 10 games to date. With this loss, the Charlotte Hornets are now 7-20. They hold on to the 2nd worst record in the East as they sit 14 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Boston Celtics. The Hornets are holding on to a 5-game losing streak. Only the Washington Wizards have the longer active losing streak in the East. And with this loss, the Hornets have lost 7 of their last 10 games to date. Jumping out to Atlanta, the Hawks would host the Chicago Bulls in a game that would go to overtime. The Hawks would beat the Bulls 123-122 off of AJ Griffin's miraculous tip-in, essentially buzzer beater to win the game. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Chicago Bulls would be led in scoring by their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan had 34 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists in 45 minutes. He would shoot 10 for 21 from the field and 14 for 15 from the free throw line. The Bulls starting shooting guard, Zach LaVine, had 21 points and 7 turnovers in 39 minutes. He would shoot 9 for 16 from the field. He would go on and make 2 of his 3 free throw attempts from the line. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Atlanta Hawks would be led in scoring by their shooting guard off the bench, Bogdan Bogdanović. He had 28 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists in 36 minutes. He shot 10 for 22 from the field, 6 for 14 from 3. He would make both of his free throw attempts on the night. The Hawks' elite starting point guard, Trae Young, finished with 19 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and 6 turnovers in 42 minutes. He would shoot 5 for 18 from the field, 2 for 8 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the free throw line. The Hawks starting center, Clint Capella, had 15 points and 14 rebounds in 31 minutes. He shot 7 for 9 from the field as he made his only free throw. With this home win, the Hawks are 14-13. They are tied with the Pacers and the Knicks for the 6th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've won 4 of their last 10 games to date, and with this overtime loss, the Chicago Bulls are 11-15. They are currently holding on to the 5th worst record in the East as they now sit 9.5 games behind the Eastern Conference leading Boston Celtics. The Bulls have lost 5 of their last 10 games to date. Taking a look, last but not least, at what would happen in Houston, the Rockets would host the Milwaukee Bucks. The Rockets would end up beating the Bucks 97-92. They would win this game by 5 after they had to outscore the Bucks by 10 in the 4th quarter to win this game in front of their hometown fans. On the losing end of this matchup, the visiting Bucks were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Jrue Holiday. He had 25 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 steals, and 5 turnovers in 35 minutes. He would shoot 9 for 20 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3 as he would make all 3 of his free throws. The Bucks' elite starting power forward out of Greece, Giannis Antetokounmpo, finished with 16 points, 18 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks as he nearly fouled out in 37 minutes. He shot 7 for 17 from the field as he made 2 of his 6 free throw attempts. On the winning end of this matchup, the hometown Houston Rockets would be led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Jalen Green. He had 30 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists in 34 minutes. He shot 12 for 21 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the free throw line. With this win, the Houston Rockets are 8-18 right now. They are currently holding on to the worst record in the West as they are tied with the Spurs. They sit 10 games behind the Western Conference leading Pelicans. The Hornets and the Pistons are the two teams in the NBA with worse records than the Houston Rockets in terms of wins. They also have a better win percentage than the Orlando Magic as well. With this win, the Rockets have won 5 of their last 10 games to date, and with this loss, the Milwaukee Bucks are 19-7. That is the second best record in the East, as they sit a game and a half behind the Eastern Conference leading Boston Celtics. The Bucks also have a better record than every single team in the Western Conference right now, but with this loss, they've lost 3 of their last 10 games to date. Taking a look now at what the NBA is looking like today. Of course, today is Monday, the weekend is over, but the primetime matchup for the day is going to be on NBA TV, as the 17-9 Memphis Grizzlies, who are currently holding the second best record in the West, are going to host the Atlanta Hawks, who are tied for the 6th best record in the East, as 2 of the NBA's best point guards square off against one another. The other primetime game is going to see the 15-3 LA Clippers, who hold the 7th best record in the West, host the Boston Celtics, who are holding on to the best record in the NBA. Outside of the primetime games, at 7, the Indiana Pacers are going to host the Miami Heat, as well as the Wizards hosting the Brooklyn Nets. At 8:30, the Dallas Mavericks are going to host the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Spurs are going to host the Cavaliers. And then at 10 o'clock, the Portland Trailblazers are set to host the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that is, of course, what the NBA is looking like as we get to this very point in time. I do want to thank the ESPN, the FIFA, the NCAA, NFL, NHL, and NBA sites for giving me all the facts and figures in order to complete this episode. And I do want to thank everyone for listening, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. I'm James Sims, and this is The Elite. Thanks for listening, and peace out.